This week marks a turning point for drivers across the United Kingdom, with 3 significant changes tied to the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency that demand attention. For many motorists, particularly those in their 50s, 60s and 70s, these rules are more than just bureaucratic updates. They affect livelihoods, family responsibilities, and the independence that comes with the simple act of getting behind the wheel. Driving is not just about transport. It is about the ability to visit loved ones, attend hospital appointments, take part-time jobs, and remain connected to society. These 3 changes together tell a story of a government determined to tighten safety standards, reduce risks on the road, and ensure licenses reflect real fitness to drive. Yet they also raise difficult questions about how older motorists will cope. What happens if they fail to meet new requirements, and whether some will find themselves suddenly stranded without the ability to legally drive. The first of these changes applies directly to anyone approaching their 70th birthday. Under current law, which has been in place for decades, a driving license expires automatically at 70. From that point onward, the license must be renewed every 3 years. Until now, this requirement was enforced largely through quiet reminders sent in the post. Some drivers renewed on time, others left it late, and many continued driving unaware that their license had technically expired. But beginning this week, enforcement is tightening. The DVLA has made it clear that driving without renewing is a criminal offence. Anyone caught faces fines of up to £1,000, penalty points on their record, and potentially the invalidation of their motor insurance. In practice, this could mean not just a fine, but also the possibility that an insurer refuses to cover costs in the event of an accident, leaving an older driver financially exposed. For millions approaching 70, this rule is no longer something to deal with later. It is urgent, and it is immediate. Consider the case of Margaret, a 71-year-old grandmother in Leeds. She received her first license in the late 1960s and has been driving ever since without a single accident. For her, driving is not about convenience, but necessity. Her husband requires regular trips to the hospital, and she does the weekly shopping for both of them. When she failed to renew her license on her 70th birthday, she assumed she could take care of it when time allowed. She did not realize that by continuing to drive, she was committing an offense. Only when stopped by a police officer during a routine check did she learn her license had expired nearly a year before. She narrowly avoided prosecution by completing the renewal process immediately, but the experience left her shaken. Stories like Margaret's illustrate why the government is taking enforcement more seriously. Too many drivers are on the road with expired documents, and too few understand the consequences. The second rule change concerns all drivers, not only those over 70. Every photocard license in the United Kingdom has an expiry date printed on the front under Section 4B. That date marks 10 years from the time the license was issued, and when it passes, the license is no longer valid. Yet surveys suggest that millions of motorists have not checked the date on their card in years. The DVLA estimates that more than 2 million drivers could be at risk by the end of 2025 if they fail to renew in time. Enforcement is again being stepped up. Police have access to DVLA records, and insurers are taking a stricter line. Driving with an expired photocard license carries the same penalties as failing to renew at 70, fines up to £1,000, possible penalty points, and in the worst cases, seizure of the vehicle if it is uninsured at the time of an incident. For drivers who rely on their cars for daily routines, this is a potential disaster. Take John, a 56-year-old delivery driver from Birmingham. He works part-time to supplement his pension, delivering parcels 3 days a week. His photocard expired 6 months ago, but he assumed it was just the photo that was out of date, not the license itself. He thought his entitlement to drive remained intact because he had passed his test decades earlier. That assumption was wrong. When his van was involved in a minor accident, his insurance company refused to pay out because his license had lapsed. John suddenly faced repair costs of nearly £3,000, wiping out months of income. His story highlights the very real financial consequences of ignoring this rule. The photo card is not a formality, it is a legal requirement. Failing to renew can turn an ordinary fender bender into a life-altering financial burden. The third major change is perhaps the most controversial, and it concerns the health of older drivers. At present, those over 70 must renew their license every 3 years, but the process requires only a self-declaration of fitness to drive. You tick a box, sign a form, and state that your eyesight meets the legal standard. There is no compulsory test. That system is about to change. Under proposals now moving forward in Parliament, older drivers will be required to undergo compulsory eyesight checks as part of the renewal process. Every 3 years, beginning at 70, drivers would need to provide evidence that their vision is sufficient for safe driving. This could mean visiting an optician for a formal eye test and submitting proof with the renewal application. For those who wear glasses or contact lenses, this might be a simple adjustment. But for others with deteriorating vision, it could mean the end of driving altogether unless corrective treatment is possible. For drivers like Harold, a 72-year-old retired teacher from Kent, this is a deeply personal issue. Harold has early-stage cataracts. His doctor assures him that his condition does not yet prevent him from meeting the legal standard, but the compulsory test could change that assessment. If the test shows he falls below the threshold, his license renewal would be denied until surgery restores his vision. Harold supports the idea of safer roads, but worries about losing his independence. He lives in a rural village with limited public transport, and without his car, even reaching the nearest supermarket would take over an hour by bus. For many in his position, the proposed eyesight checks feel like a blunt instrument protecting safety, yes, but also threatening autonomy for those who have managed perfectly well on the road until now. The eyesight proposal is not the only reform under discussion. Lawmakers are also considering lowering the legal alcohol limit in England and Wales from 35 micrograms per 100 millilitres of breath down to 22, matching Scotland's stricter limit. That shift would mean that even a single drink could put some drivers over the line, particularly older adults who metabolize alcohol more slowly. Proposals also include expanded roadside saliva tests for suspected drug driving, tougher penalties for driving without insurance, and stricter enforcement of seatbelt rules, with the potential introduction of penalty points for passengers as well as drivers. Each of these reforms reflects a broader push to improve safety on British roads, but each also adds new layers of responsibility for motorists. These changes raise important questions about balance. On one hand, there is undeniable evidence that older drivers are more likely to experience health issues that can affect safety, from declining eyesight to slower reaction times. On the other, many older drivers have spotless records and rely on their cars to remain part of their communities. Removing their ability to drive or placing new hurdles in their way risks increasing isolation and reducing quality of life. For a 75-year-old living in a rural area, the loss of a driving license may mean being unable to attend church, see grandchildren, or even collect prescriptions without relying on others. Policymakers argue that safety must come first, but for individuals, the emotional cost of losing independence is profound. The human stories behind these rules are as important as the laws themselves. Imagine a widower in Cornwall who drives to a nearby town twice a week to play bowls with friends, his only regular social outlet. If he fails an eyesight test and cannot renew his license, that part of his life disappears overnight. Or consider a 60-year-old woman in London caring for an elderly parent. She juggles part-time work, shopping trips, and medical appointments, all by car. If her photo card expires unnoticed and she continues driving, she could suddenly face fines, legal trouble, and insurance nightmares. These are not theoretical inconveniences, they are the lived realities of British drivers, and they underline why understanding and complying with the new rules is so critical. The message for every motorist this week is clear. If you are approaching 70, mark your calendar and prepare to renew your license on time. Do not assume the DVLA will quietly overlook delays. If you hold a photocard license, check the expiry date in Section 4B today. If that date is approaching or has passed, apply for a renewal immediately. And if you are over 70, prepare for the likelihood that compulsory eyesight testing will become law, and consider scheduling regular checkups in advance. These steps may feel like chores, but they are essential safeguards against fines, loss of insurance, or even the suspension of your right to drive. In the coming months, debates will continue about how far these reforms should go. Some campaigners argue that older drivers should undergo full retesting every 3 years, not just eyesight checks. Others believe the focus should be on improving public transport in rural areas so that losing a license does not mean losing independence. What is certain is that this week marks the start of a stricter era for driver licensing in the United Kingdom. The days of letting an expired photocard linger in your wallet or renewing years late without consequence are ending. The government is determined to tighten standards, and every motorist must adapt. For drivers over 50, these changes may feel daunting, but they also represent an opportunity to take stock. Renewing on time, checking your eyesight, and ensuring your documents are up to date is not just about avoiding penalties, it is about protecting yourself, your passengers, and everyone else on the road. Driving is a privilege that carries responsibility, and the new DVLA rules remind us all of that fact. The challenge ahead is to balance safety with fairness, ensuring that older drivers are not unfairly punished while still keeping British roads among the safest in the world.